My name is Mary Suter, and I'm the Assistant Vice President responsible for economic education for the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. The topic for this episode is monetary policy and unemployment, and we started by conducting a simulation with the goal of helping attendees understand how unemployment is measured. This began when we distributed yellow, pink, or green slips of paper to each audience member.
So I'd like those of you who have yellow slips of paper, if you'll raise your hand. If you have a yellow slip of paper, I'd like you to move over to this section over here in the room. You can leave your lunch. You're going to come back. Just go over there for a moment. Okay, and there should be a few people who have pink slips of paper.
Oh, that's not good. You are newly unemployed.
Now, I'd like you to go right over here in these two rows near the cameras for just a minute. So if you have a pink slip. Okay, and the rest of you should have green slips of paper, right? Everyone has a green slip of paper. I want you to come over here. I have chairs over here, and I have candy bars at these chairs. And the candy bars, I want you with green slips to come and get a seat at a candy bar.
Just as we planned, there were more people with green slips than there were with seats with candy bars. So not everyone with a green slip was able to have a seat and a candy bar.
Okay, now, I want to talk a little bit about this demonstration in terms of unemployment. All right, so those people back here who had the yellow slips of paper, those people are under 16 years of age. Okay? As a result, they are not part of the labor force in this room. They are not counted as part of the labor force. Those of you over here who had my pink slips, you are people who are retired, or you're choosing to stay at home with your young children, or perhaps you were looking for a job but you've stopped and you're no longer looking. So as a result, you also are not part of the labor force. The rest of you, those folks with green slips of paper, you are all part of the labor force. Some of you have jobs as evidenced by your payment here. Others of you don't have jobs, but you're looking for jobs. You're actively seeking work. You're older than 16 years of age, and you're actively seeking work, so you are unemployed. All right, so based on this little activity, we could calculate an unemployment rate for our economy in here.
The unemployment rate is the percentage of the labor force that is 16 years or older, willing and able to work, does not currently have a job, and is actively looking for work. The Bureau of Labor Statistics determines the unemployment rate on a monthly basis. They do this by collecting survey data from households, 60,000 households, and based on the responses regarding the people in the household who are 16 years of age or older, they categorize them as employed, unemployed, or not in the labor force.
But something to keep in mind is that labor markets are dynamic. There are many moving parts. And the notion there is that you transition from one of these areas to another. So Adrienne comes out of college, and she is looking for a job. So she is unemployed. She finds the job at the Federal Reserve Bank, and she works here for a while, and perhaps then she has a family and decides to take off 5 years and stay at home with her children. So now she's no longer part of the labor force, but after that period of time, she enters back into the labor force and seeks another job. So the unemployment statistic or the employment statistic, those are little spots in time, little snapshots in time, but people are moving within these areas during their lives.
Economists categorize unemployment into 3 types: frictional, cyclical, and structural. Frictional unemployment refers to people who are newly entering the job market. This includes recent college, high school, or trade school graduates, and those transitioning from one job to another. Cyclical unemployment is typically associated with recessions or temporary fluctuations in the business cycle. And structural unemployment is caused by a mismatch in the skills held by those looking for work and the skills demanded by those seeking workers. A structurally unemployed worker might lack the skills needed to continue working, or might not work in a part of the country where jobs are available and may need to be retrained, to relocate, or both in order to return to work. The Federal Reserve has two objectives: to maintain maximum employment and price stability. In the past, the main focus has really been on price stability. The thinking was that if we achieve price stability, if we have a healthy economy, maximum employment will follow. In December of 2008, the Federal Open Market Committee, or FOMC, noted that the objectives of the Fed were maximum employment and price stability, and that language has appeared in every FOMC statement since September of 2010. Then, in December of 2012, the FOMC went a step further and said that they decided to keep the federal funds rate at 0 to 0.25%, and that they anticipate keeping that exceptionally low rate as long as the unemployment rate remains above 6.5%. So now they're actually making ties to what they're going to do with the federal funds rate based on some level of unemployment. This is an important change and one that will continue to shape policy for the foreseeable future.
We're talking about what's behind the FOMC statement today. Our objectives are to identify changes in the FOMC statement over time and identify or explain how changing the FOMC statement reflects changing communication strategies for the Federal Reserve.
The FOMC, or Federal Open Market Committee, meets regularly throughout the year to review economic and financial conditions and to make decisions regarding interest rates and the nation's money supply. I started by distributing packets of previous FOMC statements from 1994 through 2013 and asked audience members to attempt to place these statements in chronological order from oldest to newest. After completing this task, we reviewed the actual order of the statements and discussed how they changed over time. Participants noted that the statements became longer over time and that readability became more complex.
Okay, and I ran the reading level on these and did a grade level reading, and actually the reading level has gotten more difficult over time because of the number of sentences, the length of the sentences, and the sum of the words. What about transparency? Is it more clear what the Fed is doing? Are we being more transparent about what we're doing, why we're doing it?
Participants had mixed thoughts. Yes, the Fed is a great deal more transparent. However, there is a lot more description, and the description is more complex and unfamiliar. This makes it more difficult to understand.
They always choose a $25 word at the expense of a 50-cent word anytime they can, which I think reduces transparency, but in general we are saying more about what we do. What about transmission of policy? What happened over time?
While participants agree that the statements are more complex, they also understand that the intent of the FOMC is to communicate more information. And indeed, participants thought that the FOMC was communicating more about what they are going to do next and how long that policy might stay in place.
So you see a lot of transition there in how we're reporting and what we're reporting, and perhaps some of the whys of that.
One of our economists did an average word count of the FOMC statements over time.
So 99 words in 1994, 645 words in that latest one. So many, many more words. Of course, a lot of that contributes to the clarity and understanding of those of us reading those statements.
Recognizing that the length and complexity of the statements have increased with the complexity of monetary policy, we worked with participants to help them understand the new format of the FOMC statements. As an example, we looked at the March 20th, 2013 statement. The first and second sections provide an overview of current economic conditions. They're describing what's happening in the economy and providing information on the economic outlook in the context of the Fed's dual mandate. In the third section, the statement offers language pertaining to special operations, like Operation Twist or one of the quantitative easing issues. The fourth section is the status of current policy actions in the context of the economic outlook, so what the Fed is doing and why. In the fifth section, the statement provides forward-looking language to tell us what they're going to do, how long they're going to do it, and why they're doing it. The sixth section is the vote on the directive. If you look at the very early FOMC statements, you'll realize there was no vote on the directive. They just say, the chairman said this. To summarize, Over time, FOMC statements have become longer and more complex. However, these longer statements provide information about current economic conditions, special operations, current policy, what the Fed is planning to do, why they are pursuing the action, and how members of the FOMC voted relative to the directive. We hope this session helps you better understand what's behind an FOMC statement.